You know, when we think of ancient cities, we usually picture these incredible ruins, kind of standing alone in time. But what if a city's real power wasn't just in its big marble columns, but in its connections? So today we're going to dive into Ephesus, not as just a pile of stones, but as this bustling central hub of the ancient world. A city that was totally defined by its web of relationships with, well, pretty much everyone. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, first things first, let's get our bearings. Here's Ephesus, sitting perfectly on the Aegean coast of what's now Turkey. And we're not just talking prime real estate here. This spot was literally the hinge between Europe and Asia. Its location was everything. It was the natural meeting point for trade, for armies, and for new ideas flowing between totally different civilizations.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. UNESCO calls it one of the most important cities of its time. I want you to just picture this. It was the final stop for caravans that had trekked all the way from Persia, and it was the first port of call for ships heading out to Rome. This quote really nails that dual identity, a city that was both an end and a beginning.
So here's our game plan for breaking down Ephesus's incredible network. We'll start with why its location was so key, then we'll check out its neighbors, some friends, some not so friendly. We'll see how empires fought over it, dig into its massive trade engine, and finally, wrap up with how all these connections are what really made the city what it was.
So what made this one patch of land so special? I mean, why here? The answer really is all in its unique geography. Ephesus didn't just have one thing going for it. It kind of had the whole package, which made it an absolutely irresistible prize for anyone with a little ambition.
The ancient historian Polybius just hits the nail on the head. He saw Ephesus as a citadel, right? A fortress that controlled everything coming and going, both on land and by sea. And what's so fascinating here is that Polybius isn't just talking about money and trade. He's pointing out its military importance. If you controlled Ephesus, you controlled the entire region of Ionia, period.
And you can really see why right here. On one hand, Ephesus had this amazing natural harbor, opening it up to the entire Mediterranean. But at the same time, it was the finish line for huge land routes, like the famous Persian Royal Road that stretched all the way from Iran. This double whammy made it the ultimate marketplace, a place where silk from the east could literally be traded for wine from Italy.
But of course, Ephesus didn't exist in a vacuum. I mean, every great city has neighbors, and for Ephesus, that neighborhood was a really complicated mix of allies and rivals. These relationships were intense, they were personal, and honestly, they shaped the city's identity just as much as any faraway empire ever did.
So Ephesus was a big shot in the Ionian League, which was this confederation of 12 Greek city-states all along the coast. The best way to think about it is like a family. They all shared a culture, a language, even a common religious sanctuary. But like a lot of families, right? They were fiercely competitive, always trying to one-up each other for influence and cash.
And its biggest rival was just down the coast, Miletus. This gives us a fantastic side-by-side look. Miletus flexed its power by setting up colonies all over the place, almost 90 of them. Ephesus, on the other hand, built its influence differently, on its massive commercial wealth and the worldwide fame of its cult of Artemis. And this difference became a huge deal during the Ionian revolt against Persia. Miletus went all in and was totally wiped off the map. Ephesus played it much smarter, much safer, and it survived.
Now, another huge relationship was with the powerhouse inland city of Sardis. For centuries, Sardis was the capital for big regional empires. But it had one major problem. It was landlocked. And that's where Ephesus came in. Ephesus was its port, its vital gateway to the entire world. It was a symbiotic relationship for sure. Sardis had the political muscle, but Ephesus held the keys to the sea. They were so connected, Sardis would even send for religious artifacts from the Ephesian Artemis in times of crisis.
With a location like that, and with such powerful neighbors, it is absolutely no surprise that Ephesus became a trophy that every major empire wanted to get their hands on. The city's history is really a story of constantly navigating the ambitions of superpowers, just trying to survive and thrive while being stuck right in the middle.
Just look at this timeline. It's like a game of political ping pong. I mean, talk about whiplash. Control flips from the Persians to the Athenians, then back to the Persians, then over to Alexander the Great, and then, get this, the city is literally left to the Roman Republic in a will. This wasn't chaos, this was just the reality of being such a strategic prize.
And through all this, Ephesus became a master of political survival. Take the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. Ephesus starts out on Athens' side, paying into their alliance. But the second the tide of war starts to turn, boom, they switch to Sparta, even becoming a key naval base for them. It was pure pragmatism. They weren't betting on loyalty, They were betting on the winner to protect their business interests.
But this pragmatism could have a really, really dark side. When a rebellion rose up against Rome in 88 BCE, Ephesus sided with the rebels. And in this horrific event that came to be known as the Aegean Vespers, cities across the region massacred Roman and Italian civilians. This number, 80,000, is the estimated total number of people killed. It's just a shocking reminder of how high the stakes were and how quickly these alliances could turn deadly.
The politics may have been a roller coaster, but the true engine of the city, the thing that kept it running, was commerce. Ephesus wasn't just rich, it was a cornerstone of the global economy. It was the place where goods from 3 different continents were bought, sold, and shipped back out.
And this table here, it gives you a perfect snapshot of its incredible trade network. You can just see the constant flow of stuff. Grain and papyrus flooding in from Alexandria in Egypt, luxuries and glass from Antioch over in Syria, and in return, Ephesus was shipping out its own famous wine, olive oil, and textiles, especially to the massive market in Rome. It was a true global marketplace.
Now, here's something that just blows my mind. The connection between religion and finance in Ephesus. That world-famous Temple of Artemis, it wasn't just for pilgrims. It was one of the most powerful economic institutions of its time. It basically worked like an international bank. It held deposits from regular people, from other cities, even from kings. Its holy status made it the safest place in the ancient world to keep your money.
So as we start to pull all these threads together, you can really see that Ephesus was a city that was defined top to bottom by its connections. Every single part of its identity, its power, its wealth, its culture, its very survival was woven from this super intricate network of relationships.
The city was a hub with all these different spokes. On the political front, it had to juggle its relationships with massive empires. Economically, it was the dead center of a huge trade web. Culturally, it was always in conversation with places like Athens. And even religiously, it was exporting its own powerful goddess, Artemis, while at the same time importing new cults like Isis from Egypt.
But here's the thing. A city that lives by its connections can also die by them. And this image of the silted-up harbor, it's just incredibly sad. The Caysta River, the same river that created the fertile valley Ephesus needed to survive, slowly but surely filled its harbor with silt. It cut off its main artery to the Mediterranean. The city fought a losing battle for centuries, but in the end, its most important connection was gone.
And all this really brings us to a final thought. The story of Ephesus shows us that a city's greatness is tied to its place in a much bigger network, but it also shows just how fragile those connections can be. So it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? In a world where the currents of trade, power, and even nature itself are always shifting, can any city truly hold on to its place at the center of the world forever?